Welcome to another episode of the Empowered Half Hour. And I'm so excited to bring you today's guest. In our pre talk, we share a lot of things in common, and I think she's going to be a blast to interview. And I think you guys are going to get a lot of value from her. So let me go ahead and introduce you to Sue Willoughby. She is a midlife strategist. Sue, welcome to the show.
Hey, Becca, thank you so much for having me on today. I'm very, very excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you too. I think that in our pre-talk that there was a few things that really excited me. And one is we didn't dive into it too much because I wanted to save it for the interview itself, but we had ended kind of talking about one of the things that you have done professionally in the recent past was Equus coaching. And then you had said that you're still doing that, but you have recently pivoted to helping real estate agents and midlife professionals start a podcast. And you can see the little twinkle in my eye. I'm like, oh, let's talk about that because there's one thing that you said in there that really intrigued me. And that was because you said everyone has a story. And I know that to be true. So, listeners, you have a story in you. It doesn't mean you have to start a podcast, but I want you to tune into this conversation because I have a feeling you might start to look at yourself and what you've been through a different lens by the time we're done. Because it is the Empowered Half Hour, and that's our goal. Sue, why don't you share with me and the listeners, what's the backstory to that? Like, how did you start the transition from Equus to podcast?
Well, the backstory is a lot longer than all of that.
I'm sure we all have got a long backstory.
But I came to Equus coaching from growing up with an alcoholic parent and finding a place to be, and that was with horses. And over the years, it just sort of evolved. And I didn't realize at the time how much support I was getting from these amazing animals. And as the universe works, and if you're open to it, it will lead you where you need to be. And that was to Equus coaching. And I can talk more about that later if you wish. And I do one-on-one coaching using horses as a feedback loop. So they're part of the conversation, and they are what connect the human with what's really going on inside them and help them bring that to the forefront. So that's kind of the quick and dirty explanation of
That
Equus
is,
coaching.
there's so much in that because, I was one of the themes that we like to talk about on this podcast a lot is regulation. And so what I'm hearing in that is that the horses are helping to regulate your clients in a way that is really natural, like animal to person. But I would
Hmm.
love for you to like share a little bit more about that because
Absolutely.
listen, I was raised by alcoholic parents too. Love them. But I'm sure there's listeners on here like, yeah, me too, me too, me too,
Like,
me
you're
too.
on your own. Have fun with that.
So let's like talk a little bit about that. We'll continue the conversation, but I want to hear a little bit more of like what you've witnessed and how the horses have like how you use coaching and the horses to help your clients move forward.
Yeah, thank you. It is very interesting because horses are prey animals, and I will say that people don't realize that because they're so big and they're so majestic and powerful. And they're like, "Ooh, really?" Yes, they're prey to something in the wild. So every cell in their body is processing information to assess their environment, whether they're safe or not. They're also herd animals, so they communicate with the other animals in their herd, even when they're in a barn or with, in stalls or their own separate paddocks. They're still communicating with the other horses around them and assessing their environment. Like if they hear something, they see something, they smell something. I mean, their senses are very much heightened. They also have huge hearts, and they have been gracious enough over the centuries to allow us to connect with them on a very heart-centered level. There's math around that. There's science around that. So when you talk about regulation, when you are in the presence of a horse, you will start to, because they sense all of our breath, our heart rate, everything. They sense, so they know what's going on inside of us, and they don't see that facade that we put up. They see right through that. So if they're, once again, I talked about them feeling safe or needing to feel safe. And if they're with a person, right? You're part of their herd. You're a herd member. And they're looking to you like, are you going to be a good leader? Or do I need to take control? Or do I just need to stay away from you? Because I'm getting an incongruent message here. So it's very interesting how they can very quickly peel back the layers of all of the things, that we bury. And it also brings people into their bodies. You become more embodied when you're around a horse because it's a very somatic experience. Everything that we've experienced in our lives is stored somewhere in our bodies. And we
1000%.
yeah, and we get those pings, we get those alert messages, just like the horses do, right? When we don't feel safe or when something is coming up that really annoys us, and why does it annoy us? We don't question that. A lot of times we just react rather than taking a beat and saying, "Why am I feeling this? Where did that come from in my body?" And then progressing, taking a beat and just saying, "Okay, I understand now." Or even if you don't, just saying, "I'm not going to react right now. I'll get back to you." So horses are really good with that. They're also really good at teaching leadership because, like I said, when you are with them, you're in their herd. And when they're in a herd, they are going to look to the most grounded, centered entity or being in their herd, whether it's usually another horse, but it's typically the mare. It's typically one of the mares. It's not the big stallion or, some pumped up gelding, right? They're going to look to like this, the calm, centered one and say, okay, should we be moving along? What's going on here? And so they're going to look to us for that as well when they're with us.
That's really incredible. And there's so much in what you said that I even want to relate to kind of your evolution going into helping people with podcasting
Hmm.
because, I would assume, but I want to ask the question through working with horses, do your clients get a deeper sense of themselves and their story? Because that's one of the things that we had like just nibbled on like right before we
Yeah.
hit live. But I'm wondering how working with horses helps to elicit not only the somatic healing and regulation and getting them healing again from whatever they're going through, crazy childhoods, abusive work environments, partners, whatever, we all got things. But I'm really curious to see what personal and self awareness comes from the work with the horses.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will say this one word, it's about relationship. How you show up in relationship, not just with other people, but with yourself.
I'm
How do
having
you
goosebumps head to toe.
It's true because the horses, they don't lie. And the other thing is they're not gonna judge you. They don't judge what you're wearing, what car you pulled up in, how you look. They don't care about all that. They don't understand that. So there's no judgment. So you can peel back the layers and bring your true authentic self forward. And like I said, it is about relationships. So how you show up in any relationship, whether it's with yourself or with others, I mean, that's how you're going to show up anywhere. So it really does expose those things and allow you to have a better understanding of why you react certain ways, why you feel certain things. And it allows you to just be present and understand yourself better. That's the shortened version.
That's freaking incredible. You can see how intrigued I am. I'm like, oh my God, I could
Yeah,
spend
it's pretty
hours
amazing.
talking about this. It's pretty cool. But, we only have 20 minutes left and I need to keep going. All right. I do want to kind of, again, start the pivot to what you're doing now and some of the benefits it has to people and the power of their story. But to kind of bridge that, like when people have this awakened sense of self, the relationship within themselves, how they're relating to others, I would imagine that they start understanding that they're so much more powerful than they thought they were. And this
Mhm.
gets us back to the story. And maybe that's the bridge to what you're doing now. But I would love to hear more about that. Like, tell me a little bit about what someone experiences when they first come on live to their story, like when they realize that they can indeed make a difference if they own more of what they've been through in a way.
Yeah, that's a great question. And also, like, owning your story and also just building curiosity around that story. And so many people, so many women especially, get in their midlife and they get stuck. They think, "Oh, my kids are moved out, or I'm at the peak of my career. What am I going to do?" And they start, those questions come up, but they don't know what to do with them. Or they
Sure.
think, I can't leave corporate America. I'm a CEO, or I'm a whatever. I'm a high level manager. What am I going to do? Am I going to go sling coffee at Starbucks? Maybe, maybe that's just what you need to do. Who knows? But it gives you the awareness and the curiosity to start exploring what your other options may be. And also, we also tend to discount the things and the experiences that we've had in our past.
I love that. Tell me more.
So, myself, for example, I have had a lot of a variety of experiences. I grew up, like I said, kind of on my own, winging it and trying different things. I was always curious about stuff. I was a roller derby referee.
Hey, that's cool.
I learned to fly a plane. I jumped out of a plane. I drove in demolition derbies. I mean, all these
Sue,
things.
this is
Yeah.
awesome.
Did you not read my bio? I'm just kidding. But I mean, I've never been, I think because I grew up in a household where comfort was discomfort. That was my comfort zone, was like, I never knew what I was gonna get.
I
So I'm like,
relate a
well,
lot. Yeah.
why not, right? Why not try something new? And I think that's a piece that's missing for a lot of women and or when they get into midlife, it gets packed away. So they're like, where was that, explorative part of myself? They're like digging through an old suitcase. I used to be fun. I used to have, be curious. So by just doing all of those things, it puts me in a position to help women discover that curiosity again and understand, that there is a lot of other things out there. I think I got off track a little bit. So if you want to kind of bring me back in, but
No, I
uh,
actually I was playing in this for a reason because I do feel that it addresses what midlife people are really going through. Like even
mhm,
myself, I'm extremely careered. I have my own business and stuff, but also so I'm still like living in my and where I've got one foot in corporate America and one foot in my business. But part of what opened me up to having these conversations in the first place is I got curious and I started writing again. And not because I wanted to sell a book so I can get coaching clients. I had a story
yeah,
that I felt was important to get out. And I also love writing. So I'm like, hey, here's a fun little project. And I call it my beautiful unfolding, but I just kept
yeah,
following. And now I have a podcast and other things. But
exactly.
that part that you were talking about of being curious is so important. And so I don't think we got off track. I loved
Okay.
it. I loved
But
it.
back to with the what you had originally asked me, like kind of how did I get from here to there to there? And it
Yes,
was
that's what I
just
wanted
it
to go
was
back to. Yeah.
not a direct path, clearly. It was over here and then over there. And I'm like I said, I don't know, I may have undiagnosed ADHD at 66, but I have no idea. But I was introduced to horses early on, and then that led me down one path. And then I had an opportunity to move cross country, and I did. And that took me back to school. I never went to college. I quit high school twice, actually.
I dropped out of
And
college 3 times.
congratulations, third time's a charm.
Yeah.
So, but then I had an opportunity to go back to school, and I went back and I got my AA degree,
Nice.
and I went into computer. It was in the early 90s. So, internet, web stuff, video production, all of those things. That's what I studied. And then I got into corporate America and I got into corporate training. And then, I had a six-figure career, which I never, ever, ever thought I would have. And then I'm like, okay, now what? I really hate this. I was at a very large corporation that makes airplanes. And I was in flight training and it sounds sexy and everything, but I just was like, oh my God, this is sucking the life out of me. What am I going to do?
That's for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but then you get the golden handcuffs and all of that. So I went skydiving with some real estate friends of mine and I was like, that's it. I'm done. I walked away from that job and I went into real estate. So I just go where the breadcrumbs lead me. And
Love
I've had
that. You
so many
probably
beautiful
have a very, like,
experiences.
full yes, and enriched life. I love following the breadcrumbs too, and so
Uh,
your story is very inspiring. So listeners, it's not a bad thing to follow breadcrumbs. It's scary sometimes, but it's fulfilling, and living a fulfilled life, well, might be a little better than living with those golden handcuffs where you're living in a box of someone else's dreams and expectations.
yeah.
So I appreciate what you're saying very much.
So yeah, so I spent over a decade in real estate. I'm still a licensed real estate agent. And in the meantime, I started coaching, got certified in Equus coaching and running retreats as a facilitator. And I really love that. And I had always wanted to start a podcast. I just, like I said, with my video and audio production background, I just love it. I'm kind of a techie geek, gear geek.
I
So I
have
have lots
inner
of
nerd in
equipment.
me too. I'm like, hello, I feel you.
I love the gear. I love doing all that stuff. But I couldn't think of anything that I was like, well, I also just love to connect with people. I love to connect with people on a one-to-one basis. And I'm sort of an extroverted introvert. So actually my human design type, if you really want to know, is a projector. I don't know if you know anything about human
I know
design.
that I am one
You're a
also.
projector?
I'm a spleen projector. I
Me
don't know.
too. Me too. That's why we get all those pings to be like, what over here, over this.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, me too. I was operating as a generator and it was exhausting, you know? So
Yes.
once I found out, I was like, well, that makes a lot of sense. So I started the podcast a couple of years ago and I just called it A Life Worth Being because that's my coaching tagline, Awaken a Life Worth Being. Doesn't really say what the podcast is about, but I did a rebrand, which was much more aligned with me as a person and how I go through life. And now the name of the podcast is Midlife Strategies for Badass Women. So,
Hey.
and it's just, I love being able to meet people from all over the world. I mean, I've interviewed people and been interviewed. I'm, obviously a guest on shows as well. And it's just so incredible and so intimate. And I just love it that you can connect with people, you can hear their stories, you can share your story. And I feel in my heart that whenever I have a guest on or whenever I'm on someone else's show, that one person out there is going to resonate with the message of that
I
episode.
believe that too. I mean,
At
I'm on,
least,
when this airs, I think it'll be episode 101, 102, 103, something in
yeah.
that. And what I can tell you too is just from my own experience is when it hits that one person and you get the DM that like, I needed this, a month later, I listened to this and made a major change. Like you can see my eyes tearing up. Like
Yeah.
it's like,
It
it's
gets
worth
you
it.
right here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's worth it. And I know this episode, someone's going to be listening to it and hearing that same thing. So I appreciate everything that you shared because I think if people are listening to like what is being said in between the words, there's this also piece to life that's about discovery and curiosity. And the more you stay aligned to that or open to that, and you're using the words breadcrumbs and you follow those breadcrumbs, opportunities open up for you that you didn't
Mhm.
know were there. And it's really kind of an incredible ride to like witness it through the lens of wonder instead of fear. And that's what I hear you
Absolutely.
saying
Yeah.
in between your words.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, there's always going to be fear, but it's self imposed. I just finished a book by Michael Singer, who did The Untethered Soul. He wrote The Untethered Soul. And also, the most recent book I read was The Surrender Experiment, which was
Listen to
his
that
story, basically. Have you read it or have you heard of it?
too.
It's just
Mm-mm.
amazing about how when things are presented to you, you immediately let, your mind and your ego take over and say, I don't like that, or I don't want to do that, or whatever, rather than just surrendering and seeing what happens. It's a good practice. You
Yes,
don't have to do any big things, but
I love
the
that.
yeah. So anyway, the podcasting thing led me to a few months ago, I was like, you know what? I love podcasting. I want to be able to bring it to more people. It's so easy for people to start podcasts, but it is intimidating. And I've got over a decade of real estate experience. I said, well, maybe I'll start with real estate professionals. There's so many ways to market yourself as a real estate professional, and most of them suck, I'll be honest with you. So, I mean, when you think about, cold calling, door knocking, those things are in the past. So either that or you're on TikTok or Instagram doing crazy things. If you create your own podcast as a real estate professional or any other professional, it gives you authority. It
Yeah.
builds trust and it puts you in front of people and other people's audiences, if you're doing an interview show. And you don't have to be a Joe Rogan, right? You just need to connect with the people that want to connect with you. And you can be a local expert. And it's just a beautiful way to build your client base and also be an authority and a local celebrity, if you want to call it that. So I created a course called Podcasting for Real Estate Pros, and it's actually a 21 episode free podcast on Apple, Podcasting for Real Estate Pros, and it has a integration guide. So like a workbook, but an integration guide. So you can listen, but if you don't do anything, you're still just listening. So, you get the integration guide or the implementation guide, and then you're off to the races. And then obviously, if you need more help, I'm here to help you do that. I'm also, because I never stop learning, I love learning.
I have like
So,
a gazillion certifications too. I'm like, I'm a
right.
certified this and a certified that, and they're not always in the same hemisphere. And people are like,
Exactly. But like I said, follow the breadcrumbs. Where does that lead to? So if any of your listeners out there, it's not just a course for real estate agents. It's about, how to successfully start and build your podcast. So I had fun making it. And like I said, I've got my certification in podcast growth coaching and I just love it. It's a medium that I love. It's something that I was led to. So here I
so
am.
let's pretend that there's a listener out there that's like, wow, I really love this conversation and I'm feeling really inspired now. Maybe I should start a podcast, right? But what's on the other side of it? So, not just like a revenue perspective, podcasts are all over the place. Like, so,
Yes.
sometimes there's drama ones and murder mystery
Right.
ones, and then professional ones that are business outcome based and stuff. Regardless of what the intention of as the podcast, what I'd like you to focus on is the host. What kind of transformation have you seen for the host? Whether it's fulfillment or monetary, but I think I would love to share with the listeners, like, what's on the other side of becoming a podcast host?
I think the biggest thing I know for myself as well is that it gives you a platform on which you can have a solo podcast if you just want to educate people. So if you have a specific niche that you want to educate people in, it gives you the opportunity to just like a YouTube channel, and you can also turn it into that. I mean, there's an endless possibilities. But I think it gets you out of your comfort zone. Number one, allows you to explore new opportunities. And also by meeting other people, if you have guests on your show, it's going to open up your world. And I think that that is a big piece of it. And it allows you to share your story, how you show up in the world. It just puts it in a really creative space. So it brings up your creative juices, fulfills that piece of you. And you can also create and make it a business if you want. So there's lots of opportunities to do many different things. But I do think it's just, if you're looking for a way to express yourself, that's a beautiful way to do it.
I love it so much. There's a recap of this conversation that's like going through my head right now because during our pre talk, I was sharing with you that the tagline for the show is regulated, radiant, and revived. And I'm like, hey, if we can hit on one of those things, that's amazing. We'll deliver the listener experience and it'll be great. And now I'm sitting here, I'm like, Sue, way to be an overachiever. We hit all three. We hit all three. We talked about regulation, co-regulation with horses. We talked about following the breadcrumbs, which is very much a characteristic of being in your radiance. When you're in your radiance, creativity is overflowing, your synchronicities are in place and all of that stuff. And then we were talking about, the benefits of being a podcast host or what's on the other side of it. And you were just talking about like this revived feeling of like,
Yeah.
being in yourself and expressing yourself. And that is a beautiful gift. So, anyways, thank you for hitting all three for us.
No
Appreciate it.
problem. Happy to be here. Happy to check those boxes for you.
So, well, I normally ask like the questions like, what are you passionate about? But all the questions that I wanted to ask you came out naturally. But I do want to end the podcast with a question directly so that the listeners can grab it from you. What is an empowering message that you would want to share with the listeners? And however you want to answer that, you may.
Yeah. And I'm going to go back to some of the things that we did talk about. I think first building awareness and then moving into curiosity about the things that come into your awareness. Also understanding that if you are pulled in a direction to an interest or a passion or something, it's okay to put on your beginner glasses and be a beginner. I think that is a huge thing that scares so many people is that, oh my gosh, I'm going to look stupid. I'm going to, I'm going to bomb out on this. I'm going to fail miserably. All I got to say to you is, what's the best that could happen out of that? Because yes, you could. And the other thing is, you don't have to do it forever. You can try something. You go to the clothing store, you don't put something on that fits miserably and then be like, well, I guess I should just buy this anyway and take it home. And you put it in your closet and you never use it again, right? I've done that. So you can try things on and you can say, nope, I don't think that fits the way I thought it was going to fit. What's next? So I would say just continue. Always be curious. Be aware
And
and always be curious.
you said something too that I think is a good mic drop for the listeners. And what's the best thing that can happen? I think we, by nature, we go to worst case, boom. And that's naturally going to happen. But what if you paused and took the time to ask, like, what's the best thing
Yeah.
that can happen? And I
Yeah.
think that was really wise. I appreciate that share. Well, Sue, here we are. 30 minutes flew by. I knew it would. And I would love for you to share with the listeners how to stay in touch with you, where they can find you.
Yes, thank you. WilloughbyCoaching.com is my website. And then I'm on Instagram at Sue_Willoughby. And then if you want to listen to my free mini series podcast, it's Podcasting for Real Estate Pros, and it's on Amazon, or I'm not on Amazon. Well, it might be on Amazon Music, but it's on Apple and all of the other podcast services. So check it out.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, thank you for being a guest. It was a pleasure to meet you, interview you, hear your stories. You're amazing. Thank you again.
My pleasure. Thank you.